You just won a great victory against policing, regulating free speech and speech about politics. You've probably been following this debate before the Oklahoma Ethics Commission, which proposed in December to regulate when one person talks to somebody else and shares their opinion about what's going on in the legislature. Now they've modified that proposal. They released another draft earlier this month. They had their final meeting today, and in just a minute I'm going to show you the testimony that I delivered at their meeting today. But let me cut right to the chase, because you won a major victory, especially if you're one of the 3,225 Oklahomans who signed this petition. I want to thank you and congratulate you, because the Oklahoma Ethics Commission has officially declared this proposal dead. And that doesn't just mean it's dead in January. That means it is dead for the year. They can't, because of their process, they cannot move forward with this again until next year. And actually it would be almost a year and a half from now that something like this could take effect. So for the moment, we have won one of those temporary but very important battles in defense of liberty and freedom of speech. Here is the testimony. Once again, I'm Trent England. Thank you very much. Thank you, and I will be brief. I do thank you, Chair Long, for being so thoughtful in your comments. And I am Trent England with the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. I am speaking not just for myself and for OCPA, but also for what is now 3,225 Oklahomans who have signed a petition because they don't want the potential for their name to show up on a government list that says Jane Doe believes in this cause and gave it money, and here's her home address, and here's who she works for. We've been told that this rule was very narrow and was not meant to capture the soccer moms that I talked about in December and mentioned again last time. Excuse me. We've been told that this is obviously constitutional and that it's about outside groups secretly trying to influence policy in Oklahoma. I received back, and I thank the Commission for this, my Public Records Act request earlier this week. And I do believe that some of what the public has been told about this rule is just not accurate. For one thing, as I mentioned at the last meeting, one group, one outside group, one group that doesn't disclose its donors, was intimately involved in crafting this rule through what appear to have been multiple conference calls and many emails and much collaboration going on behind the scenes, and that's the Brennan Center in Washington, D.C. Now, I agree with him on some things and disagree with him on other things, but it smacks of a little bit of a lack of self-awareness for the Commission to be talking about the danger of these outside groups and the danger of these big organizations from outside of Oklahoma, and at the same time crafting a rule with one of those organizations. Furthermore, even the Brennan Center, which advocates for rules like this, described the concept here as tricky, and said that described the rule as the idea as novel, certainly unusual. These are all, excuse me, these are all quotes from from emails from the Brennan Center to people on the Commission, staff on the Commission, as well as to staff and to the chair here. We've been looking, the Brennan Center writes, Brennan Center expert writes, we've been looking hard at the constitutional limits of regulating legislative issue ads, and it'll be tricky. Right, so the idea that this is obviously constitutional, even the person who worked with the Commission staff to draft this rule thought it was at least tricky and novel and unusual. We've also been assured that it's very narrow, but here's a quote from an email that says, the challenge is to try to encompass those entities funding communications and also those low budget or no budget activities trying to do the same thing but using volunteers. This is internal communications written by Ashley Kemp, working on this rule, stating that the purpose of this rule from the beginning, now granted it has narrowed over time, but the purpose of this rule was not just to capture people spending money, it was to capture people not spending money, and it was to capture volunteers. And I think that for this Commission to tell the media and tell other people that no, this is very narrow and our intent was never to do that is simply dishonest. Finally, the one thing that hasn't been discussed here yet today is the fact that the commission does not have power to do this. And this here might sound like a paraphrase from my testimony at the meeting 2 weeks ago. It says, under the Oklahoma Constitution, the Oklahoma Ethics Commission only has jurisdiction to enact and enforce rules for ethical conduct of state officers and employees, and then it quotes the Oklahoma Constitution to that effect. But that's not a quote from me. That's a quote from the Oklahoma Ethics Commission's general counsel in an email to a person asking whether the commission had the power to regulate local officials, and the general counsel, the legal expert for the Oklahoma Ethics Commission, assuring this person that no, the power of the Oklahoma Ethics Commission is in fact limited. It's limited by the state constitution. And while it reads like a paraphrase of what I mentioned to the, well, it is a paraphrase of what I said to the commission at the last meeting. It's a quote from your own legal expert that I think you should take seriously. What sets the United States apart is not just that we have freedom of speech, and not just that we listen to lots of people in our political debates, but that we actually place limits constitutionally on the power of government in general and on the power of particular government agencies in particular. The Oklahoma Ethics Commission does not have the power to regulate in this area. That power is reserved to the legislature. Thank you. So once again, congratulations, a great victory for liberty, for freedom of speech, for the Bill of Rights, for our Oklahoma Constitution and its protections of our rights to petition the government, to freedom of speech. If you want to be more involved and you're not already a part of the OCPA Patriots Facebook group, I encourage you to sign up for that. You can just search for OCPA Patriots or go to the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs Facebook page and you can find the group from there. It's a private group. It's a place for people to talk freely among themselves about what's going on in state and local government in the state of Oklahoma from the perspective of supporters of limited government and free enterprise and individual liberty, the things that we believe at the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. And so I encourage you, sign up for the OCPA Patriots Facebook group. Sign up for our email list. There's going to be a lot more to come over the next few months as the Oklahoma legislature comes into session. Once again, I'm Trent England. Thank you.